He joined Balliol College, University of Oxford, and obtained a master's degree in politics in 1977. He was elected to a research fellowship at St. John's College, University of Cambridge, where he studied judicial review of economic legislation by the Supreme Court of India, specializing in the interface of law and economics. In 1983, he was a visiting scholar in the School of International Development, University of East Anglia. He served in the Ford Foundation's South Asia office in New Delhi as assistant representative and program officer of human rights and social justice. He joined the UNDP in India as a senior economist and assistant representative of government and public policy. He served also for UNDP in Jakarta as its senior governance advisor. He was appointed policy advisor for justice and governance in the UNDP Oslo Governance Center. In 2005, he was advisor for governance, human rights, rule of law, justice, and legal reforms. In 2012, he joined Jindal Global University as our founding dean of the School of Government and Public Policy. He has an impressive track record of publications comprising books, articles, and various UN policy reports, reflecting his interdisciplinary research, teaching, and policy experience in development programs, human development, law, governance, institutions, and policy. Our next panelist is Professor Apurva Nanda Jha from the Department of Hindi, University of Delhi. Professor Jha was part of the core group that designed the National Curriculum Framework for School Education in 2005 and was a member of the National Focus Group on Teaching and Indian Languages formed by the National Council for Educational Research and Training, NCERT. He has worked with the Committee to Advise on Renovation and Rejuvenation of Higher Education in India under the chairmanship of Professor Yashpal. Created by the Government of India in 2008, the committee worked to craft a new vision plan for the sector of higher education in India. His critical essays have appeared in all major Hindi journals. Apart from his academic and literary writings, he also contributes columns in Indian newspapers and magazines on the issues of education, culture, communalism, violence, and human rights. Dr. Jha has also been in residence at University of Pennsylvania as a visiting scholar at the Center for Advanced Study of India in 2010. And finally, our joining this panel once again is Padam Shri, Sister Cyril Mooney from Loreto School, Kolkata, and Sister Mooney's accomplishments we all know, and it was already, she is already introduced by my colleague Anamika in the previous panel. So, and Sister is very humble most of the time. And in fact, she didn't want to share much of her awards and accomplishments with us. She just talked about her work when we asked about a bio from her just in 2-3 sentences. So I'm not going to embarrass her any further. We are privileged and honored for her to be able to join us in this panel. So I'll now invite our first panelist, Mr. Harsh Mandir, to come and speak here and address all of you. Thank you.
Friends, we are passing through times of great global tumult. There's an ethical and a political churning the world over. And I think that we need to reflect even more at a moment like this about how we are raising our children, what conversations we are having with them, and indeed what education overall is doing in either contributing or not contributing to a fairer, kinder world. I believe, and in a book I wrote recently, I said that if if I was a historian writing about India 100 years from now, and I was looking back to India today, how would I describe it? And I said that there'd be two fundamental things about India that I would write, looking back to today. The first of these is what I call um, inequality with indifference. It is not just the material facts of rapidly growing inequality that troubles me, but a moral framework where this is considered either at least inevitable or normal, or in some cases even, even desirable. And uh, and we see, a time in which people of privilege have almost exiled the poor from our conscience and our consciousness. And we've created, for children and young people from the middle class, they're really being raised almost in a separate world. We've sort of, as Arundhati Roy has somewhere said, the only successful secession movement in this country has actually been the secession of the middle class from the rest of India. So we've created our gated colonies, our malls, our multiplexes, air-conditioned schools. You know, if the electricity is not working, it doesn't matter. We'll generate our own electricity. If the hospitals don't work, we don't care. We'll have world-class hospitals for ourselves. Now the air is not great, so we've also found ways of cleaning up the air for ourselves. And in this separate world, the only poor people, young people grow up and interact with are people whose job is there to serve. And they never see them as equals and as possibly more accomplished. And the possibility that a working class person can actually be more accomplished doesn't even enter their minds and hearts. But the other feature which I would write about if I thought about India 100 years from now would be the legitimizing of prejudice. And I think that we see not just an absence of outrage and a normalizing of inequality and injustice, but we also see bigotry and prejudice having got so normalized in our everyday discourse, and the discourse in which the children we interact with in our classes are raised in. And and since I wrote the book, we've also seen global changes. We've seen the election of Donald Trump, for instance, in the U.S. And I was reflecting on what is common in this new breed of leaders that we're seeing, from Donald Trump to Narendra Modi to many others. And I do feel that these are leaders who reflect, firstly, an extremely divided society. But they're leaders also who, instead of bridging or healing these divides, actually thrive on these divisions. And they're leaders who, instead of fighting prejudice and hatred and division and bigotry, actually reflect and in some ways legitimize and amplify these sentiments. And I'm trying to imagine being a young person growing up in this world, which, for all its limitations, growing up in Nehruvian India, in just post-Nehruvian India, was a different India. And one needs to recognize and acknowledge that difference. We had, if you ask almost anybody what is the one thing that would change India, we would say it's the universalizing of education. And when you unpack that, what were our expectations from this process of universalizing education? Our first expectation was that it would, make us better for the market. And perhaps in that one, uh, uh, there has been some success. I was talking to a professor, and she was recalling to me that a very close friend who was teaching in the IIT met her and said, I'm really happy today. I feel that I've really accomplished something. So, what is it? He said, every single young person in my class today has got placements with the best companies in the US. Uh, so that's your big achievement. So preparing you for the market, for the global market. Uh, but there were two other expectations that we had from the idea of universalizing education in our country. One of these was that it would create greater equality of opportunity. That young people would, would be allowed to, would get the space uh, to accomplish a place in life based not on the accident of their birth, but on the qualities of their mind and heart and their hard work and so on. When Rohit Vemula a year ago took his life, leaving behind this absolutely heartrending letter, which I think is the most powerful indictment of what we haven't done in 70 years. He said, I could not escape the fatal accident of my birth. And the fact that for millions of our children cannot still escape, for them, all of us are here because of the accident of our birth. None of us are here because we deserve to be here, including myself. We're here because 1 billion people in our country at least didn't get the life chances that we did. And if we did, if we just go down the road and the young man who's serving us food here, or somebody who's building something on in a construction site somewhere, or a woman who is sitting outside a brothel, who knows that if she had got the same life chances, she might have been a philosopher, she might have been a scientist, she might have been a poet. And who knows that if you and I hadn't got the life chances, we might have been sitting somewhere else and doing something else. And I think that we have far from creating equality of opportunity, we've actually developed a whole system of education which directly mirrors the inequalities of society. So exactly where you're born is, suppose the richest people will now send their children to the best known educational institutions in the world. If slightly less rich, you'll go to the most expensive schools and elite schools and so on, and then you go down, and you're a low middle class, working class urban person, you'll go to a municipal school with certain outcomes, and you go further down, and if you end up, say, as a street child who has no one to take care of her in the world and has to sleep under the open sky and will never see the inside of a school, all of this is determined simply. So the education system, the second betrayal of the education, or the first major betrayal of the education system, that far from creating greater equality of opportunity, it has only mirrored, reproduced, and further entrenched the inequalities of society. But I think its biggest betrayal, biggest betrayal of all of us who believe in education, has been the third expectation. And that was that education would create more rational, more scientific, more humane, more compassionate human beings. When I look at the US, and I've never been an admirer of the American people except in the last 3 months, 2 months actually, I have seen an extraordinary expression by ordinary Americans countering, a leadership which is, as I said, uh, legitimizing bigotry and hatred. So when Donald Trump passes this anti-Muslim ban, which in a sense, the clear subtext of it is that every Muslim is suspect by the fact of their being Muslim. And therefore, it is legitimate to stop somebody on the basis of their Muslim identity. He passes an order of that kind, and within hours of that order, you see ordinary American people gathering in every airport with posters saying, "We don't agree, you are welcome here." I've saw posters, pictures of posters which said, "We are all Muslims now." And that's an incredible statement to make in the times that we live in. We are all Muslims now. If being Muslim is something that leads to this kind of uh, victimization, then I declare that I'm also a Muslim. People went to their Muslim neighbors in little towns and villages and said, "Nothing to fear. We are there with you." Lawyers gathered in airports. Airport authorities made place for them. They sat down with their laptops. They put up posters saying, "Anybody who's being stopped, we are here." Judges at every level, including junior judges, started striking down the ban. Film actors started speaking out in awards functions about how this country belongs equally to all. And at a moment like that, I started looking at ourselves. And I must say that I have long held, and my very, very dear friend Apurvanand is here, and we've often had discussions about, and I've said, no, I still believe that the ordinary Indian Hindu Muslim is instinctively secular and tolerant. And, after what I'm seeing happening now in the UP elections and whatever, we might be, but we're not doing anything about it. We're remaining silent. We're not seeing the same response. After the UP elections, in many villages, posters have come up saying Muslims are no longer welcome and they must go. Where are the Hindus of that village going to their neighbors and saying, "No, we don't agree, you have to stay"? We see Muzaffarnagar, where 50,000 people were ejected by hate violence and are still living away from their homes, unable to return, living in camps, living in these colonies. I go among them and I asked, I said, "Don't you want to go back to the village of your birth?" And they said, "Who wants to live like this? But koi bulaye tab to hum aaye." If somebody calls us, then only we can go back. And to live with the pain that your neighbor of generations is not even calling you back. So there is a silence that we are observing. And I was speaking to a set of law students at the National Law School in Hyderabad. And I told them, I said, there can be only three reasons to explain our silences. Either that we are frightened to speak, or second, that we don't care, or thirdly, that we share the sentiments of hatred and bigotry. And we have to examine the reasons for our silences. And we have to, in that light, examine the conversations that we are having and not having with young people in the times that we are living in. And I think that, very, very loud and clear, that is the question that I thought in the time that was allotted to me. There was a lot else that I wanted to say. In fact, I didn't know Sister Cyril was here, and I was going to talk about how I have observed how it is possible to create an environment of equality if you really passionately believe in it. And I don't know anyone who's done that more than Sister Cyril. The first way that we can have a different India is to create that India inside our classrooms, where Hindu and Muslim, rich and poor, upper caste, low caste, people, boys and girls and people of other genders, all of them grow up together. But in the India that we have for ourselves, I think that the idea of a classroom like that terrifies us, because imagine my daughter and my domestic help's daughter and a street girl could actually sit on the same bench, and they might even become friends. And most terrifying to me, my domestic help's child might actually turn out to be much brighter than mine. And how will I live with that? And we have not been able to create spaces. And just going back to America, you know, when people analyzed the election results there, they said that white Americans substantially voted for Donald Trump, except those who had gone to university. When I look at India, and I'll say this, and I'm sure it'll be many things that I've said, many of you may not agree, you might find it provocative, but in India, in India, actually, the more educated that I see people to be, there's a much higher chance of finding bigotry among them and finding, communal sentiments, casteist sentiments, anti-women sentiments, etc., anti-sexual minorities, etc., among people of the highest education. And because I work with homeless people, I work with people living with hunger, I work with, I'm privileged to work with people who are, survivors of mass violence and so on. And in my time with the poorer working class people deprived of the opportunities of education, I find a much higher possibility of finding people who are compassionate, tolerant, accepting, diverse, humane, inclusive. And to my mind, that was bad enough, but when I saw that university, having an education in the US has created liberal-minded women and men. Education in India is creating people who are comfortable in their privilege, who take privilege as entitlement, and who exclude people of difference and people who are more disadvantaged. And I believe that's the challenge that we are all discussing here. I think it's a challenge that has contributed. The failure of India's education system is substantially responsible for the India that we are seeing today. And we have to collectively take responsibility for this. And we have to reflect that if we want a kinder, more humane, more inclusive India, we have to start with ourselves and our classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harsh Mandir. I'll now call upon our Professor Dean R. Sudarshan from Jindal Global University to address all of you.
Very much. I attended the last session. I wasn't here since the morning, and it was wonderful to hear people speaking with passion and knowledge on a subject about which they have every right to claim knowledge. And I'm an interloper of a kind here, not in the same league as those wonderful people, but yet since in the last, this is my 5th year in the Jindal Global University, heading a School of Public Policy, I've been forced to think about some of these issues. And so equally, what I have to say is in the nature of some exploratory reflections, not any firm conclusions. I just, if you listen to Harsh Mandir, every time he speaks, you learn something new. I mean, I've heard him speak a few times, and each time I wish he could go on longer and that I wouldn't take his time. But, we go through this program, so I've been given some time. I make use of it. The title of this segment is called Mentoring Socially Responsible Citizens. It's the word mentor, of course, comes from the Homer's Odysseus. Odysseus went off to fight in the Trojan War, leaving his son Telemachus and his wife Penelope at home in Ithaca. And he called upon his friend to take care of the family and especially this young man. And his name was Mentor. And hence we have the word mentor for someone who is entrusted with the responsibility to share knowledge and to show the way to some young person. So we have that lineage for the term, but we don't really have a category of people or even a self-knowledge in ourselves that each of us, as we grow up, has an obligation to be a mentor to some young person or persons. That self-reflection somehow needs to come in. It happens by dint of personality. Some people are naturally mentors and can give guidance. Others may not do that. But nonetheless, the need for a mentor is there in every young person. And I think it's we talk about in economics unmet needs, but a very large unmet need that's not spoken about as much as it should be is this need for mentoring in young people. There are some of us who may be lucky and come across a teacher like Sister Cyril, who must have mentored innumerable young persons who have become better human beings as a result of that. But it's left far too much to such contingent circumstances. And it's time for us to think about, not in some bureaucratic way by having, some yojana like, Swachh Bharat or Rashtriya, Swasth Bhima Yojana or something like that, and have a mentoring program of that kind, that surely that'll kill it. But what we need is an internalization of an ethical obligation to young people. But if you're going to be discharging an ethical obligation, it means that then you must internalize ethics oneself. Because, you could have, I suppose, a large number of young persons get misled and led into lives of crime and violence because of having mentors who are not ethical. So there is a important need to understand that. And unfortunately, our education system doesn't place enough emphasis on ethics. It's not a case of, learning the catechism or the Ten Commandments or, the edicts of some book. It's about being able to judge and to be able to be other regarding, basically. This sense of being other regarding is the basis for ethics. In other words, if you took something like the categorical imperative of Kant, it will say that, do unto others what you would have others do unto you. So this other regardingness is central, and that somehow we need to figure out ways by which we inculcate it. But we also live in a time, in the previous session, we had references to post-truth, to an era where people think that, since this makes me feel good, it must be good. It's a kind of emotivism that is, in a way, the antonym or the opposite of ethics. To say, if I feel nice and good about something, then it must be good, no matter what. We've also had an arrogance in terms of the cult of the expertise. We, in all our higher education institutions, people say, oh, I'm an economist, I'm a sociologist, I'm a historian, this is my specialization. These generally, tend to put up walls, silos. Human beings are not, born as into one discipline or the other. There's an essential need to understand interdisciplinarity. There are insights, of course, from disciplines, but we get locked into all this, and it's a cult of the expertise. There's a big movement now in the world of young people questioning economists and the economics they learn, the economics they are taught. There are behavioral scientists who've done studies that show there's a disproportionately large number of economic students end up being rather selfish in their attitude and not other regarding, because economics begins with the assumption that each of us is an individual, maximizing our utility and so on, and somehow that by a process of osmosis may condition a worldview in people. So we are in that era where we think that, we have the wherewithal, not understanding what all this knowledge is meant to do. That, for what purpose is this knowledge to be put to? In that, I'm striving to say that we have to revive the idea that teaching is a noble profession, it's a calling, it entails mentoring young people. It means that it is a practice that has internal standards of excellence. By that I mean that when if you play chess, you enjoy the game, and if your opponent makes a brilliant move, you just marvel at it for the beauty of the move. You're not doing it for some tournament prize or some external reward. You're doing it, you're playing chess, and you want to play it well because of the internal standards. It's the internal satisfaction of that is the meaning of the practice. So if teaching is a practice of that kind, then teaching requires you to internally have standards of excellence, which requires that you reach out and make a difference to young people. You see, most of the time, whatever we study in terms of, economics or whatever, we forget, right? At the end of it, we say, oh, education is, what it's made us, what kind of a person we've become as a result of that education. And to have a focus on that you're actually molding a personality, and that it is a very big and important obligation, is something we need to internalize and say that in that sense, teaching is a practice. It's not simply having some skills and, using MOOC or, having videos in class as opposed to just standing up and lecturing. Those are all skills. You can acquire any number of pedagogic skills. But that's like being a bricklayer. Bricklaying is not a practice. Architecture is a practice. That means you've got to have a teleology. You've got to know what is it that you're headed towards. What is the end? So in that sense, a teleology is important. Unfortunately, we blame the colonial history. Naipaul, who's an outsider, came and wrote a book in '66 called Area of Darkness. Shashi Tharoor, not very originally, calls his book Era of Darkness, castigating the colonial period. But in Area of Darkness, Naipaul points out things that people don't see. It is what Harshmander has been pointing out, that people go about being completely indifferent to the most horrendous kinds of deprivation, suffering, poverty, dirt, as if it didn't exist. Maybe there's so much of it that we've all had to, as survival instinct, condition ourselves not to see it, because then life would become very impossible, maybe. But it takes an outsider to point it out, and when it was pointed out, Naipaul wrote in Area of Darkness that the Indians defecate everywhere, '66. And in a very Churchillian turn of phrase, he said they defecate on the streets, they defecate on the railway tracks, they defecate on the beaches, and they defecate everywhere. And when this book got published, it met with a very hostile reception. I remember a review by Dr. Karan Singh, which was very critical, saying, why is Naipaul saying all these nasty things? And Naipaul's rejoinder was, if anybody looked at all the critical comments I've got for my book, you would think that I am the man who invented the word defecate and the action defecate, right? So there is a reality here that we need to look around and see what is going on. And in that sense, I think, Macaulay famously said that all of the Indian classics and literature in Sanskrit and Persian is not worth one shelf of Western books. Unfortunately, we seem to think now that just that one shelf of Western books will do as a total sum and substance of knowledge, right? And this is very tragic because you miss out on both. Therefore, I think we need to think of mentoring as an essential part of the practice of being a teacher. That every teacher is also necessarily a mentor, and that means that you must strive to have some internal standards of excellence and an internal standard of ethical conduct in order to be able to do justice to young people who will be influenced by what we say and do. And it's our conduct more than what we say. We have to get them to learn to think, not tell them what to think. We've got to get them to learn how to learn, and they may choose whatever they wish to learn. But we have to be examples for this. And I think, therefore, more introspection, more self-conscious ways of doing this, developing mentoring as a discipline and a practice is, I think, very necessary if we are going to avoid a fate that's certain to befall us if people go on, as Harshmanda has described, that we seem to be doing for the most part. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Sudarshan. I'd now call upon Professor Apurvananda Jha.
बहुत शुक्रिया। मुझे इसके लिए पहले माफ़ी मांग लेनी चाहिए कि मैं एक भारतीय भाषा में आपसे बात करूंगा। और यहाँ भारतीय में किसी गर्व की भावना के साथ नहीं कह रहा हूँ, थोड़ी शर्म और झिझक के साथ कह रहा हूँ, क्योंकि अभी भारतीयता के गर्व का नारा लगाकर हम किसी का कत्ल कर सकते हैं। और इसलिए जैसा बेनेडिक्ट एंडरसन ने कहा है कि अगर सचमुच आप राष्ट्रवादी हैं तो इसकी पहली जांच यह है कि क्या आप अपने राष्ट्र के किसी काम के लिए शर्मिंदा हो सकते हैं। और अगर आप कभी शर्मिंदा नहीं हो सकते तो आपको अपनी जांच करनी चाहिए। हम जिस मुकाम पर यह सारी बातचीत कर रहे हैं 2017 में, इस सत्र के पहले कुछ शब्दों का इस्तेमाल किया गया, जैसे यह कि हम ऐसी दुनिया में हैं जहां लगातार लोग एक जगह से दूसरी जगह जा रहे हैं। इसलिए कहना बहुत मुश्किल है कि किसी का ठिकाना कोई एक निश्चित ठिकाना है, वो बदलता रहता है। दूसरा शब्द उनके लिए शरणार्थियों का है, पनाह गुज़ीरों का, जो पनाह मांगते हैं। और इससे ऐसा लगता है कि कोई एक जगह थी और दूसरी जगह जाकर वे शरण लेंगे। लेकिन एक तीसरी हालत है, और वह है दिमागी और नफ्सियाती यानी मनोवैज्ञानिक रूप से शरणार्थियों की, जिसमें एक बहुत बड़ी आबादी जहाँ है वहाँ रहते हुए भी ये महसूस करती है कि वो वहाँ की नहीं है, क्योंकि उसका कोई पड़ोसी नहीं है। और जब वक्त आएगा जिस वक्त उसे पड़ोसी के हाथ की ज़रूरत होगी, उस वक्त वह हाथ नहीं बढ़ेगा, बल्कि ये हो सकता है कि वह हाथ केरासिन का कनस्तर लेकर उसके घर पे डाले और उसमें आग लगा दे। तो इसलिए हम एक ऐसे वक्त में रह रहे हैं, और ख़ासकर अपने हिंदुस्तान के बारे में हमें यह कहना चाहिए कि हिंदुस्तान में अब यह नहीं कह सकते हम कि बोडोलैंड या मुजफ्फरनगर या गुजरात की कुछ जगहें या छत्तीसगढ़ की कुछ जगहें वे हैं जिन्हें हम अंग्रेज़ी में कन्फ्लिक्ट जोन्स कहते हैं। अब पूरा का पूरा हिंदुस्तान एक कन्फ्लिक्ट जोन है, और एक हिंदुस्तान में एक बहुत गहरी चुप्पी है, और ये गहरी चुप्पी हिंदुस्तान के अल्पसंख्यकों की चुप्पी है, यहाँ के मुसलमानों की और यहाँ के ईसाइयों की। कल शाम मैं कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन क्लब में कंधमाल की हिंसा पर वृंदा ग्रोवर और सौम्या उमा की किताब पर हो रही चर्चा में शामिल था। कंधमाल में जिनके साथ बलात्कार हुआ वे नन्स थीं, और उनके साथ जो न्याय व्यवस्था ने किया वो हम सब में सब के लिए अपना सर शर्म से झुका देने के लिए काफ़ी है। ग्राहम स्टेन्स के साथ जो किया गया, उसके बाद अगर उच्चतम न्यायालय यह कहता है कि दारा सिंह का गुस्सा इसलिए जायज़ था कि उसे ऐसा लगता था कि ग्राहम स्टेन्स धर्म परिवर्तन में शामिल थे, तो हम समझ सकते हैं कि हमारे साथ क्या हो गया है। इसलिए जब हम इस सत्र में बात कर रहे हैं सामाजिक रूप से उत्तरदायी नागरिकों के निर्माण की, तो इसमें मैं जिस शब्द की तरफ आपका ध्यान दिलाना चाहूँगा वो नागरिक है। और मुझे लगता है अब इस शब्द पर हमें गौर करना चाहिए, क्योंकि पिछले कुछ दिनों से इस शब्द का इस्तेमाल करके हिंदुस्तान के में रहने वालों पर हमला हो रहा है। क्योंकि कौन है नागरिक? जिसके पास आधार कार्ड है, जिसके पास कानूनी दस्तावेज हैं। जिसके पास कानूनी दस्तावेज नहीं है वो भारत का नागरिक नहीं है, और वो नागरिकता के सुविधाओं और नागरिकता के अधिकारों से वंचित किया जा सकता है। और नागरिकता के साथ जो दूसरा शब्द बहुत गहराई से जुड़ा हुआ है वो है कानूनी। तो आप किसी को गैर कानूनी कहकर उसके पूरे वजूद पर हमला कर सकते हैं, और जब आप हमला कर रहे होते हैं और उसका विरोध किया जाएगा तो आप ये कहेंगे कि नहीं, मैं उस पर हमला नहीं कर रहा हूं, मैं उसके गैर कानूनीपन पर हमला कर रहा हूं। और यही धोखाधड़ी और चालाकी और चतुराई उत्तर प्रदेश में अपनाई जा रही है, जहां बूचड़खानों पर हमला हो रहा है, और भारत के 6 राज्यों में उसके तुरंत बाद यह शुरू हो गया है, जहां बूचड़खाने बंद किए जा रहे हैं। और इसी गैर कानूनीपन, इस अवधारणा का इस्तेमाल किया जा रहा है, यह कह के कि नहीं नहीं, हम तो सिर्फ गैर कानूनी चीज़ों पर पाबंदी लगा रहे हैं, हम मुसलमानों पर हमला नहीं कर रहे हैं, हम उनकी आजीविका पर हमला नहीं कर रहे हैं, हम इस गैर कानूनीपन पर हमला कर रहे हैं। तो मैं सिर्फ यह अर्ज करना चाहता हूँ कि शायद अब वक्त आ गया है, क्योंकि एक वक्त तक और कल तक हम लोग ये कहते रहे थे कि स्कूलों का काम सामाजिक रूप से उत्तरदायी नागरिक बनाना है, लेकिन मैं अब इस नागरिक शब्द से काफ़ी डरता हूँ, और मैं यह कहना चाहता हूँ कि स्कूलों को रविंद्रनाथ ठाकुर की तरफ लौटना चाहिए, जिन्होंने न तो यह कहा कि हमें भारतीय बनाना है, न यह कहा कि हमें राष्ट्रवादी बनाना है, और न यह कहा कि नागरिक बनाना है। उन्होंने सिर्फ एक ऐसी श्रेणी का इस्तेमाल किया जो हल्की लग सकती है लेकिन जो बहुत उपयोगी है, इंसान या मनुष्य, और वो बहुत कठिन है। लेकिन हर वह शख्स जो है उसके वजूद को मानना, उसको स्वीकार करना, उसके साथ एक इंसानी रिश्ता बनाना, इसके लिए मेरे अंदर काबिलियत है कि नहीं है, क्योंकि ये हम सब लोगों को मानना चाहिए कि हमारा आंतरिक गुण नहीं है। हम में कई प्रकार की असुरक्षाएं हैं, हम अपने आप को एक दायरे में बंद करना चाहते हैं, हम ऐसी एकजुटता रखना चाहते हैं जिसमें जो हमको सुरक्षित रख सके, इत्मीनान से रख सके। किसी दूसरे के साथ संपर्क में आने में हमें डर लगता है, घबराहट होती है उससे संपर्क बनाने में। अजनबी को देखकर हमारी पहली जो प्रतिक्रिया होती है वो पहली प्रतिक्रिया कोई दोस्ती की, स्वागत की नहीं होती है। और स्कूलिंग, अगर स्कूलिंग कुछ है तो हमें इस असुरक्षा के भाव से बाहर निकालने की कोशिश है। रिश्ता बनाने की भाषा हमारे अंदर कैसे आ सके, ये स्कूल का और विश्वविद्यालयों का, मैं पिछली कक्षा में पिछले सत्र में सोनाली नाग की बात से बिल्कुल सहमत हूँ कि हमें ये नहीं कहना चाहिए कि ये स्कूलों ने नहीं किया और इसके चलते यूनिवर्सिटी बेचारी क्या करे। मेरा कहना है कि यह काम यूनिवर्सिटियों का भी है, क्योंकि अगर टीचर एजुकेशन का पूरा प्रोग्राम है तो वो स्कूल नहीं बनाते हैं, वो यूनिवर्सिटियाँ बनाती हैं, और वो बहुत घटिया प्रोग्राम है जिनसे हमारे शिक्षक निकलते हैं। तो मैं सिर्फ यह कहना चाहता हूँ जो कोई नई बात नहीं है। भारत के पहले माध्यमिक शिक्षा आयोग में मुदलियार ने कहा था कि जनतंत्र को अगर चलना है तो इस जनतंत्र को चलने के लिए हमें ऐसे लोग चाहिए जिनकी निगाह बिल्कुल साफ हो, जिनके पास भाषा का वह बोध हो जिससे वो लफ्फाजी को और सच्चाई को अलग कर सके, यानी कोई लफ्फाज उनको सम्मोहित न कर ले। हमें ऐसा नेता नहीं चाहिए जो हमें नशे में डाल दे या जुनून में डाल दे, जो बोले तो हमारा खून रगों में दौड़ने लगे और हम किसी को मार डालने पर आमादा हो जाएं। और हमें ऐसा नेता भी नहीं चाहिए जो खुले आम झूठ बोल रहा हो और हम खुश हों कि वो झूठ बोल रहा है। अगर यह धोखाधड़ी की ट्रेनिंग जो पिछले कुछ सालों में भारतवर्ष और पूरी दुनिया को दी जा रही है, जिसमें खुलेआम यह कहा जा रहा है कि हाँ हम झूठ बोल रहे हैं और तुम क्या कर लोगे, और फिर शर्म के मारे और झिझक के मारे पूरा मीडिया और सब भी लोग ये कहने लगते हैं नहीं नहीं ये जो कह रहे हैं इनका ये मतलब नहीं है, इनका ये मतलब है। हालांकि हम बिल्कुल खुले कान से सुन रहे हैं कि हमें यह कहा जा रहा है कि गुलाबी क्रांति और श्वेत क्रांति में आपको क्या चुनना है। और अगर हम शिक्षित हैं तो हमें इस प्रतीक की भाषा को समझ लेना चाहिए। गुलाबी क्रांति का मतलब बूचड़ खाना है और श्वेत क्रांति का मतलब वेजिटेरियनिज्म है। और कल गुजरात में जो बिल पास हुआ है वो 2014 के चुनाव प्रचार से जुड़ा हुआ है। जब गुजरात का मुख्यमंत्री यह कहता है कि मैं पूरे गुजरात को शाकाहारी बना दूंगा, तो हिंदुस्तान की क्या प्रतिक्रिया होनी चाहिए। जिस आदमी को हम सबसे कमजोर मानते हैं, गांधी की प्रतिक्रिया इसमें बहुत स्पष्ट थी जब उनसे राजेंद्र प्रसाद ने कहा कि उन्हें 35,000 से ज्यादा रिप्रेजेंटेशंस मिले हैं। और ये 1947 की बात है, याद रखिएगा, भारत आजाद हुआ है। गांधी की अपनी परिभाषा अपने बारे में है कि वो सनातनी हिंदू हैं और गो भक्त हैं, वे अपने बारे में कहते हैं। लेकिन जब राजेंद्र प्रसाद उन्हें यह कहते हैं कि उन्हें 35,000 रिप्रेजेंटेशंस मिले हैं कि गो हत्या पर कानूनी प्रतिबंध लगाना चाहिए, तो गांधी बहुत साफ उत्तर देते हैं, भारतवर्ष में गो हत्या पर प्रतिबंध लगाने संबंधी कोई कानून नहीं बनाया जा सकता और नहीं बनाया जाना चाहिए, क्योंकि भारत सिर्फ वैसे हिंदुओं का राष्ट्र नहीं है जो गाय का मांस नहीं खाते हैं। लेकिन यह स्पष्टता अब हम लोगों में नहीं है, इसलिए हम लोग दाएं बाएं देख रहे हैं और हम कह रहे हैं नहीं नहीं गैर कानूनी बूचड़ खानों पर हमला है। नहीं नहीं, जब उन्होंने गुलाबी क्रांति और श्वेत क्रांति कहा तो उनका मतलब यह नहीं, यह था। तो आज जब हम यहाँ खड़े हैं तो मुझे लगता है बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से हमारी जिम्मेदारी एक है, धोखाधड़ी को धोखाधड़ी कहें, झूठ को झूठ कहें और लोगों को कहें कि साहस के साथ यह कहना सीखो, लेकिन उसके लिए खुद हमें वह कहना पड़ेगा। बहुत शुक्रिया।
धन्यवाद प्रोफेसर झा। Now, once again, I would like to call Sister Cyril Mooney to share her thoughts on mentoring socially responsible, should I say now, humans, after what Professor Jha has said, rather than citizens, socially responsible human beings.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're not born socially responsible individuals. In fact, the definition of a baby is a human being who is socially irresponsible at both ends. But we become socially responsible because of the kind of education, upbringing and schooling that we receive. And that's why I would like to talk a little bit today of my efforts as principal of Loreto Cialda, where I was for 35 years, which enabled me to implement many things that other principals who get a shorter span of life as a principal can't do. The first thing I wanted to do was to pioneer a new approach to a curriculum, which emphasized the practical side of what we were doing, and not just only the theory. We teach a lot of social justice and human rights and all the rest of it, but again in a two-dimensional scenario. Children sitting in straight lines in the class and listening to a teacher lecturing them, and filled often with complete boredom. So the theory which we give them as in such classes has to be lived out on a practical level, and it takes a lot of time. When we think of this act, the Education Act, where children, which mandated that all children are to be in school between the ages of 6 and 14, and even if they have never been to school before and they're 12 or 13 working on a tea stall, they must be brought into school and put into a class according to their age. My first reaction to that was, how stupid. How are they going to? They'll drop out in no time. So we began to construct within the school a whole syllabus, which we called a fast-track syllabus, which was later taken by the West Bengal government and incorporated into its own, whatever you call them, things that they produce. And the idea there was that we would shorten all the inessentials, if you like, that they have to learn when they're in primary school, and make such a presentation to these children that within 1 year they could complete all that they should have learned in those first 5 or 7 years of primary school. And this would be delivered also in their own language. They wouldn't have to pick up a new language. And who were going to be the teachers of these children? The teachers would be all the class 7s, 8s and 9s in the school, who would learn all this stuff, who already knew a lot of it, but who would learn the methodologies of getting this across quickly and easily. Because our experience has been with our street children that we can take a kid in at the age of 10 or 11 years of age, never been to school before, but with Bengali as the main medium of instruction, she can be ready for class 5 or 6 in a Bengali medium school within 1 year. In this way, these street children from who have been deprived of all their rights and every possible opportunity in the future, we can fast track them through primary school and have them reach class 5 or 6 at an age when they would be on par with the other children of the class. So that was one of our efforts. Children were all involved in this. They helped to shorten the syllabus. They did many different things. Another area was where we were sending them out every week. Every child gives up one free day per month to go out into villages around Calcutta and to teach children. When we started this, there were as many as 120 children in primary schools with just one master. So they would go out and divide them up into small groups and teach them. And it all became part of their own curriculum as well, because they did it all in Bengali, and all their lesson plans were checked by the Bengali teacher each week, and the syllabus was put up on the board. They had to learn how to read the syllabus, how to know which class they were going to. They had their lists of children in those classes and so on. And that became, it's a regular thing. It's still going on. It began in 1981, and I don't know how many thousands of rural children have benefited from it. Another one was where we began to take in all the street children from the road. Now, the school I was running was an English medium, Loreto school, with all the connotations of the Loreto brand name on it. And I said, no, I said, these children have every right to be in school, besides the children we already have who can pay fees. So opened up the gates, made everybody welcome. You can come at any time you like if you're from the street, and you'll always find a teacher and you'll always find somebody to help you. And we used all our SUPW classes so that throughout the day I had a reservoir of about 45 to 50 potential teachers, free and ready to teach whoever came. We had files for every child. We even had their photographs on the files because those who lived on the station gave themselves the names of all the film stars they saw on the TVs on the station. So they changed their names generally. So having a photograph meant you could change your name, but you can't change your face. So all these things happened. Now, how to make use of this, it wasn't just simply we do this because it's part of our school routine. We also have a whole system or a whole, what you may call it, a value education program which I had developed many years back, which is still being used in schools, during which we got them to reflect and to think. There's been a lot of talk this morning about the need to make people reflect. This is one of the big areas where we have got our children to really reflect. And that's why I would like to put up on the floor, just the basic plan is there. Each lesson is divided in, I will give you the phases it's divided into, and then you'll see what the child has to do at a particular phase, what the teacher does, and then what values they are developed just by practicing that, and finally what social and intellectual skills are developed, which in most cases, where children are being taught in straight lines by a teacher lecturing them, do not develop. They don't get the chance. So we can just begin. This is the first one. The headings you can take in, they will change, they won't change. The first, the red thing key in is what's in, there's books are published on this. There are 2 million copies have been sold in India, all over. Wait, now I'll give you the better one. This is the one, no. I didn't come to advertise the books, sorry. This is the, it's been reformatted. Yeah. It's going since 1988. But the most important thing, I'll leave that down, they'll only get distracted. Now, the child does, the worst thing we ask the child to do is to work alone on the material we give. And then next, what you do is what the teacher does, provide an atmosphere which is relaxed, yet quiet, and insists that each child works alone. Now, this is one of the things that you'll find very often absent even in university. I was doing work with IIHEd students. I gave them an exercise and they were looking into each other's copies to make sure that someone else taught the same way as they did. The capacity to think for yourself and stand by your thoughts is a very important skill, which in most cases our schools do not approve of. Then the next thing is the values. Now you can see the values which come from just working alone. When you're working alone, you're practicing your freedom, your self-awareness, your openness, responsibility, courage to form and express an opinion of your own. And then the last area, the intellectual and social skills. You get the ability to concentrate, to read, understand and evaluate, and to work independently and articulate your ideas. In most of our classrooms, this is not happening. I don't know if I'm correct, but I think it's been said many times today also. Now, the second thing that the teacher has to do then is to give an assurance that there are no right-wrong answers and that each one's opinion is important. And give guidance if need be so that the child knows what to do, but do not give the answers. I went back to one school where I had done this, and one of the masters said, you know, the lessons are very nice, sister, but it takes too long. By the time I have explained the whole thing, the time is over. Well, I could have hit him with the book. But by the time I've explained the whole thing, that's the whole point about this is no explanations. Think out your own answers, hold your own opinion, decide what you want, listen to others, and listen understandingly, and be humble enough to accept if you think the other's opinion is better, accept it. If you don't, stand by your own. These are things which are very important because you can get people arguing madly about something which is of no value at all. Next thing. Then the next one, in the next part of this, first thing they're listening by themselves, then they come into small groups of about 8. In this sharers round, they sit in small groups and then they exchange their opinions of what they have read, what the material that was set for them. And this leads into a discussion, maybe some group activity, It could be some method they have of passing. We have many, many methods of passing the material back to the class. And the children get into groups. The second list is where the teacher has to circulate round. Just make sure the groups are in order. And after some time, if you know your children, you're not going to put all the playful ones together. You put the serious, mix them all up so that they're all... And if you find some group which is very, very frivolous and you need to have some extra questions, some extra work to calm them down. And then the next things they learn love, they learn how to listen to each other, they learn to disagree agreeably, loyalty, trust, it's all there on the board, all the different values which they, in the third column. And then in the last column, the ability to present ideas coherently, to express ideas clearly, to listen with understanding, to respond to new ideas, to be creative, to make decisions, and to choose material. Now, these are all things which can also be inculcated through project making and all the rest of it, but this is something which goes on week by week. So the child is exposed to this methodology all the time, and so it becomes part of their thinking capacity, because that's the one thing we're trying to do. Move on. Then the group now presents all its findings back to the class. And during this time, the teacher has to listen carefully to what is said. Because it can be that at this point, statements, you may have statements or general comments which reveal values that need to be challenged, especially at the adolescent stage. So younger children can also express negative values which can cause concern. But the important thing is that the teacher has to listen and to understand where are these values coming from and challenge them if it need be. And in that case, then you'll have a whole discussion in the next talk it over. And again, the values that they will discern are there in the third list. And then the last list are the abilities, to communicate, to think logically, speak clearly, present material coherently, and synthesize material, make connections. Now, these again are curriculum, they're academic skills which rarely get used in the classroom because of the fact that most of the time children are expected to learn by heart. And then the next one is talk it over. In the talk it over phase, the class is guided into analysing the material presented so that they clearly understand what values their presentations reveal and how their values compare with those of the great religious and social thinkers of the world. And here the teacher will be bringing in, and from in the books themselves, they'll be bringing in all this, what philosophers, what other thinkers, great thinkers, so the children have something to compare their thinking with, and not just simply with their neighbour or with what their parents say or what the local politicians say, but what the classical thinking that has come down to us from generations. And all these great thinkers are all mentioned there. Then what does the teacher do at that time? This is now the most important part of teaching the children how to think. It's what the analysis, where the teacher helps the children to analyze their thinking and to see what is right thinking and what is foolish thinking. And this is where they're learning, this is learning how to think about what they believe. And then the values there, love for truth, honesty, humility, ability to listen. Don't look at your watch. At the last speaker. So, because I want to finish this is important. Then the third column is what the values are, and then finally the skills which are produced. Then from there we go on then to a period, having discussed it over, talked it over, argued about it, all with parliamentary behaviour. They're not allowed to shout at each other, and they're not allowed to get up and hold the floor for hours talking about irrelevant things. All this is part of their training. They have to be able, when they get up, to answer someone else if they're debating. They have to repeat what the previous person said. Now, when you have to repeat what the previous person said, you have to listen to her. In many cases, if you listen to what's happening, the new person has no response at all to the person who has spoken. So then the last part is the quiet part. And this for me is one of the most important portions of this, where they think it through. They sit alone to evaluate what they have learned from the lesson. They note down any thoughts which may have struck them. And what does the teacher do? She provides a quiet place for them to do all this. No talking at this point. Everyone has to spend their time thinking, deciding, and seeing what they have learned from this. And then the values, of course, is an awareness of the spiritual dimension in ourselves. The spiritual dimension is very often totally neglected in school. There may be a few prayers at the beginning of the class and at the end, in which most people are not even thinking. And then lastly, the intellectual social skills. She gets intellectual honesty to think for herself and to believe in what she thinks. Not to listen to other people and say, oh, I should think that. Don't listen. If you listen, yes, and be ready to change if you believe. But don't change if just because it's said. This has already been repeated many times before. Clarity of thought, accuracy. And then the next step is to take it in. Here we expose them to the possibility of some divine intervention, which we call prayer, but many people have many words for it. Giving them time, you can play some soft music sometime, giving them time to take it in. And if they believe in God, to talk to God about it, and if they have other beliefs, whatever it is. But during that time, we would also bring in all the relevant quotations from scriptures. All the different scriptures of the great religions of all the world are all here. So that every child will find, as she sits there to reflect and to contemplate and to think, she will find substance for her own soul and her own belief. And this is something which is very, very important. We're not there to twist people's beliefs into something else. We are there to help them to develop within themselves a tremendous understanding of this divine being who holds us all in being. Now, whether everybody believes in that divine being or not, I'm not sure. But all I can say is that I believe, and that I firmly believe, that every child coming through any of our schools should come out. Because it's that belief and the realization of who we are in God's place that will keep us from the tremendous corruption and tremendous falsehood which has crept into our society here in India. It's something which is not necessarily in the ordinary everyday living of people, but it's coming in from higher up. Our political situation is such that we need to be able to stand up and think clearly, is this right or is it wrong? And stand up for what is right. And if we can bring up our children to that, it'll be something. And the last part is, of course, where we should carry it through. It's up to them then. When they go out, they can go out and do whatever they have to do. What they believe in, they will take out with them. Now this is, I just want a few more minutes, can I get? This business of having a layered society. Harsh spoke very well about it, and about the fact that we're not at all aware very often of what the other half of the country lives in, and how it lives and how it survives. For that reason, therefore, I made a rule in the school, our gates are always open. And our regular children went out, and whenever they came to school along the way, they found children sitting on the footpath or wherever. They talked to the parents. They said, can't they come to our school? Will you let them come to our school? Come, we'll bring them with us to our school. Bringing them in, we put them up on the roof with this SUPW, and regularly they were schooled throughout the day. They got something to eat. We even provided a place where they could bathe and have a wash. But we love them as they are, dirt and all. And we must keep in mind also that dirt, that's cleanliness, is a middle-class value. It's not a value for poor women living in the villages with only one sari and no private place to bathe. And one of the things that irritates me intensely is when I hear very well off and well-meaning ladies who have decided to do some good work on their own, and they will gather together the local slum-dwelling mothers and they will talk to them about personal hygiene. And I feel like saying, listen, will you take them into your bathing room and will you give them facilities for a bath and a change of sari and so on, so that they don't need you to tell them about personal hygiene, they need the facilities. And I wonder how many of those beautiful coiffed ladies would in fact say, yes, let them come and use my bathing room. I doubt it very, very much. And I think that I've said enough.
Thank you, sister. It's always enlightening hearing you talk, and enlightening in the sense of the kind of transformative spiritual leadership you have shown in your school, and not just in your school, within the education sector within India still now. I would like to throw this, yes, for questions. Yes, please.